Russian troops are actively preparing, and in the coming days, most likely, the summer military campaign of the Russian Federation will begin. This opinion was expressed on air by the Reserve Colonel of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, military expert and pilot instructor Roman Svitan on Channel 24. According to him, the Russians are pulling forces and resources from deep rear areas closer to the line of combat in several directions of the front, preparing for an offensive operation. Ukrainian forces are striking important enemy targets in order to prevent the enemy from having such an opportunity. In particular, at the moment, the armed forces of Ukraine are continuing major combat operations on the islands of the left bank in the lower reaches of the Dnieper. The Russians are pushing like crazy there. Now they are trying to prepare at least to force the Dnieper to create certain tactical bridgeheads on the right bank, Svitan said. Enemy movements are recorded from Melitopol towards Tokmak, from Berdyansk through Chernigovka to Pologi towards Gulyaipo. From Mariupol, the enemy is moving towards Velika Novosyolka along the southeastern flank of the Zaporizhia front. So, Russia concentrates its entire army on the front, leaving the depths of the country defenseless. Let us recall that US military intelligence has concluded that Russian President Vladimir Putin has not abandoned his main goals, which he wants to achieve in the war against Ukraine. It is noted that despite significant losses and a protracted war, Putin is not going to stop it. His strategy remains unchanged. Former spokesman for the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Vladislav Zeleznev, stated that the main task of the Russian army in the summer of 2025 will be an attempt to capture the Slavyansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration. According to him, the Russians will launch an offensive from 3 sides at once. In his opinion, during the summer offensive campaign, the Russians will try to use several key factors to their advantage. Firstly, it is the presence of green leaves on the trees, which allows for the covert movement and concentration of large numbers, primarily personnel, who carry out military tasks on adapted vehicles or motorcycles. Given Russia's limited offensive progress and resource constraints, Russia forming a buffer zone is unrealistic and will take many years, if it happens at all. Ukrainian military and political observer Alexander Kovalenko shared his analysis. The length of the controlled border between Ukraine and Russia in Chernihiv, Sumy and Kharkiv regions is currently about 860 kilometers, Kovalenko points out. If a buffer zone with a depth of 20 kilometers were to be established along this entire stretch, it would cover an area exceeding 17,000 square kilometers. To put this into perspective, throughout the entire year of 2024, the invading Russian forces managed to seize just over 3,200 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory. In the almost half of 2025 completed so far, they have captured 1,015 square kilometers. The observer raises the critical question: how many years will it take the Russians to form this so-called buffer zone, especially when factoring in not only these numbers but also the declining offensive capabilities of Russian forces and their resource concentration in other directions? Kovalenko further emphasizes the stalled progress of Russian offensives. In May 2024, they launched an attack in northern Kharkiv, but over the course of a year, they have been unable to expand their control significantly in the Vovchansk and Hlybok areas. While acknowledging the ongoing threat, Kovalenko notes, yes, they will continue to terrorize Sumy, Kharkiv, and border towns with drone strikes, artillery, and missiles. Yes, they will attempt incursions and sabotage in the border zone, but they simply do not have the potential to realize these grandiose plans, not to mention the full capture of Sumy region or Sumy city itself. So the Russian military is powerless to fulfill another of Putin's desires. Recall Russian President Vladimir Putin claimed on May the 22nd that he ordered the military to begin creating a security buffer zone along the border with Ukraine, Russian state media outlets reported. The comments come a day after Putin made his first known visit to Russia's Kursk Oblast, a border region where Ukrainian forces launched an incursion last summer. While the Kremlin claims to have fully liberated the territory, Ukraine says operations are ongoing in Kursk. I have already said that a decision has been made to create the necessary security buffer zone along the border, Putin said in a video conference with government officials. Our armed forces are currently solving this problem. Putin said the zone would be along the border of Kursk, Bryansk and Belgorod oblasts. Ukraine's foreign ministry responded to the statement later in the day, saying Putin's remarks are further evidence that Russia is not meaningfully interested in peace. Russian dictator Vladimir Putin has 3 to 4 months to use his last chance to occupy Ukrainian territories as much as possible. In the meantime, 2 groups of influence have formed in his entourage which are trying to advance their interests related to the war in Ukraine. Military analyst and director of the new geopolitics research network platform, Mikhail Samos, spoke about this in an interview with Telegraph. He explained what options for the development of events are being offered to Putin. There is a group of FSB businesses headed by Kirill Dmitriev, head of the Russian Direct Investment Fund, which, through Vitkov and Jared Kushner, is proposing to the US the idea of a ceasefire, freezing the war and starting a big business between the US and Russia. They are promising big profits to American businesses close to Trump, says the military expert. In his opinion, this will be billions of dollars from the sale of Russian gas to Europe under the American label diamond mining in Yakutia, Arctic projects, etc. All this is huge money for specific people, and there are people in Russia who would like to go down this path. This is, first of all, big business, Putin's oligarchy, which lost a lot from the war, and they would like to return to this money that can be earned on Russian resources, explains the director of the new geopolitics research network. According to him, there is another group that now has a dominant position. This is the old guard, Patrushev, Kirienko, Vino, Chemezov, who are doing business on the war. They have trillion-dollar budgets for war, and they are spending them. Why does Sergei Chemezov, CEO of the Rostec Corporation, need a ceasefire now if his military contracts are already written down for a year in advance? If there is a freeze on the war, the military budget will be reduced, the analyst notes. He recalled experts' predictions that when the war in Ukraine freezes, the Russians will continue to build up their potential and then prepare for war with Europe.